So I know what probably 99% of you are thinking, when's he gonna do some tricks? Maestro, can you turn me up a little bit? Come on now. All right. No way. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you guys really want me to speak, huh? Sorry. Well, Tom, thank you for the introduction. Thank you guys for everybody for your ears and your hearts. Oftentimes when I get to step into new arenas, new venues, and meet new faces, I always ask myself, like, how did I end up here? How did I get here? My mom used to always tell me growing up, she used to always say, son, the dots will always connect when you look back on it. And I used to be like, Mom, what are you talking about? And she used to always tell me, well, one day if you live long enough, you'll thank me and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I called her weekly to tell her, Mom, thank you, because you were right. So I'm gonna walk you guys kind of through my life of how I ended up here. And hopefully that you will find the parallels and you'll see some symmetry in your own life of how you ended up here. Now we all, raise your hand real quick again if you've been to Harlem Globetrotters when you were younger. Okay. Okay, well I can guarantee you for some of you, I was not there when you were younger. I can guarantee that. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, and the other thing too, I apologize in advance if you were disappointed that I wasn't a little taller. Okay, that's the first thing usually people say. They say, oh, you're a Globetrotter. I'm like, yeah, sorry, I'm only 6'2", I'm not 6'9", so. But my parents took me to see the Harlem Globetrotters when I was 7 years old. I can remember, at the time I was a soccer player, because it was easy, you just kick the ball and run. And my mom's like, we're going to introduce you and expose you to things that you wouldn't normally get to do. So they took us to see the Globetrotters. I never will forget. I'm a 7-year-old in Rochester, New York. I'm sitting here watching this game. They're throwing buckets of water on people. They got confetti. They were even pulling down the pants of the other team. I said, this is what I got to do when I get older. Are you kidding me? I got to do this. If this is basketball, I'm playing basketball. So this is when I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with it. Now I got to tell you guys this little backstory about my parents. Both of them are from rural South Carolina, born in the 50s during the Civil Rights Movement. Grew up with nothing. My father was one of 8. His dad died when he was 7 years old. His mom never remarried. She went ahead and raised all 8 kids by herself. My mother was one of 3, and her father was a sharecropper. So I say this because my parents instilled values in me that sometimes we just don't hear about nowadays. Hard work, integrity, having a sound work ethic. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. This is what I was instilled with. So my parents take me and my brother to see the Globetrotters, and like I said, it was a memorable experience, but then through the course of the years, I realized I didn't really have anybody to teach me how to play. See, my father was only 5'7", okay? I could eat off the top of his head standing up. My mother was 5'8". Don't know why she married a shorter man, but we won't get into that, okay? But my point of this is this. Here's one thing my parents never did. They never discouraged me to go after my goals. When I had dreams, when I had goals, my mom would always say, it doesn't matter what I think, it only matters what you think and hear. And now I find myself telling clients this. I find myself telling my own kids this. It comes down to what you believe. If we go to the Bible and we look at Mark 11:24, whatever ye ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Notice what Jesus said. Jesus didn't tell you to believe that you're going to receive it. Jesus didn't say believe that, maybe if there's a chance. He said you had to believe that you already had it. Amen. So this was the foundation of me going along through the years. I never thought I couldn't be a professional basketball player one day. I never thought that. It never crossed my mind. I was Mrs. Garrett's class in 4th grade. We had an assignment. What do you want to be when you grow up? So I wrote down I wanted to be a boxer. Why I wrote that, I don't know. I'd never been in a fight a day in my life. Didn't like getting hit in the face. But I said, I want to be a boxer. And I thought about it. I said, well, in order to be a boxer, I'm going to have to probably get hit in the face. So I scratched it out. And I put, I want to be a basketball player. And my mom showed me that when she came to watch me play with the Globetrotters the first time. Now, I had forgotten about that, but I think back over the years, that belief that my parents kept instilling in me, son, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. See, this is the thing about human beings that God's done an amazing job with. Human beings have been blessed with the ability to believe that they can do something. When you believe that you can do something, you will then take the steps and act upon it. This is why Jesus told the disciples when they tried to heal the demon-possessed boy, and they couldn't do it, and they would say, hey, Jesus, how do you do that? What'd you do? It's because I believe if you just had the faith of a mustard seed, you'd be able to do the same thing. So how many times in our lives do we have things that happen that cause us to not believe anymore? That's my question. That's my challenge to you. Even through those times, that's when you have to believe most. So as I go on through high school and college, I moved around a lot. My dad worked for Kraft Foods. We were moving around everywhere, all over the place. I was always the new kid in school. So like every 3 years, I'd walk in, and everybody's looking like, who's this guy? So I have to figure out a way to make friends. I have to figure out a way to be funny. I guess that's how I got on the Globetrotters. I knew that I could fit in if I could make you laugh, which is what I'm doing right now, you see? It worked. But my point of this is, at the time, it seemed like a curse, but it was actually my gift. Do you see what God does? This is what God does. See, I always thought God is going to come help you and make things work in the pretty and the good ways. No. He's going to mold you and build you in the ways that it feels like it's not happening. So all growing up, I'm moving all around, and I said, you know what, I'm going to play college basketball. I go to a school called the College of New Jersey, had a pretty good career there, finished second all-time leading scorer when I left. I was an All-American. I just knew I was either going to go to the NBA or I was going to be playing overseas making millions of dollars. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to tell you, my mother at the time, she was a college professor for a short stint. I had not finished college. I still had one more semester left. And I told my mom, I got to go after my dream. And she said, yeah, but you haven't finished school yet. And I'm like, yeah, but Mom, I got to go after my dream. And she's like, yeah, but you haven't finished school yet. But finally, I got the blessings of my father and said, look, Margot, school will be there. Let him go after his dream. So I go after my dream. I went to 6 exposure camps to try and get a professional job. I had a contract in Argentina fall through at the last minute, and it looked like it wasn't going to happen. So I went ahead and said, you know what? I'm done. And at that moment, my best friend at the time called me and said, hey, man, there's a tryout in Scranton, Pennsylvania for an ABA team. Why don't you go try out there? I said, okay, that'd be better than nothing. So I go out to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I'm at this tryout, and I was absolutely destroying everybody there. I'm not even going to lie to you right now. I was. And the coach walks up to me. I'm like, okay, go. He's going to come up and tell me, like, I made the team. He's like, man, you were great. He's like, I already have my team picked, though. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You mean I drove 2 hours for you to come and tell me this? And he says, hey, how about this? How about you play for the team that played against the Globetrotters? That'll get you in the door, because I'm also a scout for the Globetrotters. I'm like, so I sat and thought about it. I'm like, you mean the Washington Generals? So wait a minute. I drove 2 hours to get asked if I want to play for the most losingest team in the history of sports. So I went back and I told my dad I was defeated. And my dad looks at me, he says, are they going to pay you? I said, well, I think. It may not be much, but yeah, I think they are. He says, but I thought this was your dream. I thought this was your goal. I thought you wanted to play basketball and get paid to play basketball, and now here it is, and you don't want it. So I say this to you because we always want God to give us our treasure. We always want God to give us our gift wrapped up in a nice, pretty box with a nice bow on it. It's all shiny and everything, but God's going to give it to you in a brown paper bag that has grease stains all over it. And it's going to have the same thing inside of it, but it's just not going to look the same. So I went ahead and said yes, and I did that for a year. This is why I don't, everybody says, oh, wow, you played for the Globetrotters. Like, yeah, well, little do you know, for a year of my life, I lost every single game. And yes, that was me getting my pants pulled down as well. So I have to say that because this is how life works. This is how life works. You're going to have your good years. You're going to have your bad years. You're going to have your good days. You're going to have your bad days. This is the ebbs and flows of life. And I always tell people, we always want to get to the top of the mountain. That's what everybody wants to do, the top of the mountain. But there's nothing at the top of the mountain. It's just rock. It's barren. All the growth, all the life is down in the valley. You see what I'm saying? All the life, the shrubbery, the animals, they're all living down in the valley, but we view the valley as being negative, but that's where God molds us the most in order for how he needs to use us. So I get done with the Globetrotters. It was probably my 6th year, right? So we played 8 years. I played 8 years. Let me tell you guys this. For those of you that don't know about the Globetrotters, we would leave. The tour would start December 26th. December 26th. So that meant on December 25th, you were leaving home. So everybody's running down to go see presents and see the Christmas tree and see what Santa brought. I'm running down with a suitcase because I got to hurry up and catch my Uber to the airport. And I'm leaving for 5 months. And I got to a point where I said, I want to be present in my children's lives. I want to make sure that I'm home with my wife. And I said, I don't know if I can do this. I start to feel a shift in my heart. And then before I know it, new management comes in with the Globetrotters. They come in and I'm like, okay, what I got to do? I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to do something other than this. I got to be home with my family. So I'm living in Indiana at the time. And my wife says, well, why don't you start teaching kids how to play basketball? And I'm like, well, first of all, a kid can just go on YouTube now and just get drills. Why is somebody going to have me teach them how to play basketball? So she said that, and she deposited the seed. And a couple weeks later, I was walking into a building, and a guy randomly comes up to me and says, hey, I heard you play for the Globetrotters. Would you like to teach my boys how to play basketball at the park in our neighborhood?
Wow.
And I said, lo and behold, my wife was right. But here's why I say this. When you open your heart up, God will move people through your life and do things that you could have never imagined. So I say that because those 2 boys at that park, while I was still playing with the Globetrotters, when I got done, those 2 boys had grown to over 350 kids that I was working with in Indianapolis. And it started off with those 2 boys. And I realized at that moment I had a choice when he asked me, will you work with my kids? I could have said yes, and I could have said no. But I obviously made the choice to say yes, which segued into the next phase after the Globetrotters. Before I got done with the Globetrotters, though, I was empty. I was lonely. Spiritually, I was barren. I was in my last year, and I was on the road, and I was in Providence, Rhode Island. I said, you know what, I'm going to go get something to eat. So I go to the mall to go get something to eat. There was like a shopping center. There was a Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant there, and they had a line about as many people in here wrapped around the corner. I said, what are they giving away? Are they giving away free chicken wings or what? These chicken wings must be made out of gold. I know one thing, I'm not waiting for no chicken wings this long, this line this long. So anyway, I go into the parking lot of an adjacent building. I sit in my car, and I'm looking on the phone, looking for something to eat. Now, mind you, imagine coming to a building this size, and I park in the furthest spot from the building, and the parking lot was empty. There was nobody there. If I was going to go in the building, I would have parked right next to the building, but I didn't. So I just sat in the furthest parking spot, and now before I know it, I'm walking in the building. And that building was a movie theater. Now, mind you, I didn't plan on going to go see a movie. My goal was to go get something to eat. Now, before I know it, I'm walking in, and the only movie that's playing at that time was a movie called The Son of God. Now, there's 2 things. 1, I didn't plan on going to the movies. 2, it was a Sunday, and there was nobody else in there to see the story of Jesus. I said, shame on y'all. Shame on y'all. But anyway, I go in there, I'm sitting here watching the movie. There's not another soul inside of this movie theater, and I'm crying hysterically. Now, I knew the story of Jesus. He said something about being a drug addict. My parents drugged me to church. I went, but I didn't go willingly. And I'm sitting here watching, and I'm like, why is this hitting me differently? Why? And I'm crying hysterically. And when I left the movie theater, I told my wife, I called her up and I told her, and I went back to this old little Holiday Inn. I got on the floor on the ottoman, and I just kept praying. I said, God, just please deliver me. Please deliver me. We had already had our first child. My son at the time was 1.5 years, and we said, when we have our second child, I'm not going to be on the road because I want to be home. I want to be present. And I kept praying, saying, God, please, please, God, I don't know how. God, just please deliver me. Let me just be home. So we had made that commitment to each other that we would not get pregnant. So I get home from tour on May 13th. On May 13th, my wife says she feels sick. And I said, oh boy. She says she's having morning sickness. So she goes and takes a pregnancy test. and it's negative. On the 14th, the next day, the Globetrotters called me up. My coach says, "Hey, Judge, it's been great, man, but we're moving in a different direction." And I get let go. And there was a part of me that felt relieved because I said I can be home now. But then there was a part of me that felt scared. What's next? The next day on Friday, May 15, 2014, my wife takes another pregnancy test, and it was positive. And this is what I'm telling you about how God works. The day before, when I had a job, 2 days before, when I had a job, when I had benefits, when I had everything teed up nice and good, that's not the way it works. It's after. After, now I don't have a job, now what are we going to do? And this is what forced me to go in to what I did next, which was skill development, training kids how to play basketball. So I'm telling you all this to let you all know this. Even when it seems like it's not working, it's working. See, what I didn't tell you was about 2 hours after I got let go and I was wiping away the tears and trying to figure out what was next, a guy randomly showed up at my house. And I don't know how he got my address to this day, but he randomly showed up at my house, and I had met him twice before, and he dropped off a book. And he gave me the book of a guy who worked with NBA athletes and trained them in the game of basketball. And he gave me this book, and this book was literally the blueprint of how I was going to grow these 2 kids into 350 kids. And I said, wow, even then, God was giving me breadcrumbs. He was saying, it was almost like, come on, just trust me, keep moving, keep moving. So let's fast forward now to 2018, 2019. A business partner of mine at the time, we made the deal that we would move down to Naples, Florida, and we were going to branch out there with some business development. So me and my family, I don't know, is anyone here from Indiana? Anybody? Okay, a few, okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm not from Indiana, but what I've learned is most people from Indiana don't leave Indiana. So I don't know how you got out, but you made it, okay? I don't know how you did it. But trying to convince my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my wife to move, but we did. So we ended up moving down there. About 6 months in, we realized that this probably wasn't the best idea. Probably wasn't the best idea. Before I knew it, the business partner was doing some things that just didn't align with me ethically. And before I knew it, it's nuts. But this isn't where I wanted to be. This wasn't it. And my wife's looking at me like, what's going on? I thought this was your business. Why is this? And now I'm figuring out what do I got to do? What do I got to do? And we realized we got to move back to Indiana with no money, credit ruined, just the lowest of the low. And see, we had moved down there for a new abundant life, right? New opportunities, new possibilities. And now here I am in the opposite end of it. And I feel like I'm ashamed. I've let my family down. See, my father always told me, son, you make sure you take care of your family. You make sure you take care of your responsibilities. And I felt like I let them down. So now here I am, I'm feeling like I'm that big. Because I had put my identity, I had put my self-worth, I had put my approval of myself in things, in accomplishments, in business transactions. But I had no idea. And I see God's like, no. You're so much more than that. You're so much more than that. And you know what? Here's how I'm going to prove it. I'm going to take everything away from you. So we moved back to Indiana with nothing. Nothing. And this was only 4 years ago. Nothing. And then before I know it, I get a knock on the door. This guy shows up at our house, and I'm like, who is this guy? He introduces himself, and I don't remember what his name was, but all I heard was FBI. Now, let me tell you something. Okay? When the FBI comes in your living room and sits there for 4 hours, and you explain everything, what was going on and what was happening, and he stops you and says, I hope you figured out who's going to play you in this movie, because this stuff that you're telling me is a movie. If they tell you that, do not take that as a compliment. And I'm asking myself, how did I get to this point? I was just a guy who taught basketball. I was just a guy who loved to help people. How did I get to this point? And they said, we're not after you. You're not the problem. It was who you were involved with. We've been watching for a while. We need you to help us. So now before I know it, I'm walking around. I got 2 cell phones. My 6-year-old's like, Dad, why do you have another cell phone? I got another email address. I got to meet them on the south side of Indianapolis and I'm like, what? I would wake up every morning crying. Not to mention my wife, who at the time, she was a stay-at-home mother. Now she had to go back to work. Because I told her, I said, I just got to figure out me. I feel like I don't know what's going on in life. I feel like life is just dragging me right now. So now she's in her own storm because she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom with our kids. And I'm saying, why, God? Why? Raise your hand if you ever get mad at God, or you have before. You can't understand. This was me. And one morning I woke up, and I just sat on my edge of my bed, and I just looked out the window with tears in my eyes. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, change the way you look at it. Change the way you look at it. So I said to myself, okay, how can I look at this differently? I can look at the glass as being half empty, or I can look at the glass as being half full. God has blessed me with the ability through this higher faculty of the mind called perception. I have the ability to change the way I look at it, and how I look at it will determine how I experience it, and how I experience it will be what's called my reality. At that moment, life changed on the inside. So I made a conscious effort to start asking myself, what is this teaching me? What do I need to do differently? So if this came back around again, I would handle it in this way. So I started to slowly pick myself up, and I realized we all have this capability. But a lot of times as we look at things in the negative light, and I realize how it actually works, I like to think of life as like a weight room. Right? Life is like a weight room. When you're working out and you're really hitting those weights hard, you're going to be sore. It's going to be hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable. But this is how God develops us. Just like this is how you develop muscle. You understand the biology of building muscle. There's small micro tears that take place. That's what's causing the pain. So there's small micro tears that God has to make within our soul so we can continue to grow and continue to develop and continue to come back to Him so we can better understand this thing called life. So I realized at this moment, I said, oh, wait a minute. If I have a positive outlook on this, this could be the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I'm here to tell you guys this. God put the oak tree inside the acorn. I walk around with this every place I go. I always make sure I have this acorn right here to remind me. God didn't make anything incomplete. Nothing. You look at it in Genesis, right? He didn't rest until he was done. That's right. He didn't rest until he was done. When he was done, they said, okay, now I'm done here. And I realized, wait a minute. Everything is already inside each one of us, but it's about uncovering it. But the only way you can uncover it is through resistance, through struggle. Just like I said, lifting weights. You're never going to get stronger lifting weight that you can already lift. That's not the way it works. In order for you to grow, in order for you to develop, in order for your soul to become all that it is, you got to have hardship. You got to have struggle. This is just a part of life. The darkness is what's needed because that's what gave context to the light. So I look back at the Bible, and I always like to reference the good book, and I look at the story of Job. Right? Job was God's most faithful servant. People don't realize that God and the devil said, okay, cool. Matter of fact, yep, I'll prove to you that he's my most faithful servant. You can do whatever you want, just don't put your hands on him. Do not touch him. And I realized at that moment, this is how the positive and the negative work together. So I don't care what's going on in your life. It doesn't matter if you have hardship. It doesn't matter if you have struggle. It doesn't matter if you have illness. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. It does not matter. Even in that, God is using that to help you. He's using it to help you. I will tell you this only because this is what I do for a living now. It's a game changer. So now you don't look at situations as being something negative. Even when it's hard, you're looking at a situation and saying, wow, I don't know how yet, but this is going to develop me and make me better. So I can tell you now, as a direct result of that whole situation in Florida, as a direct result of me being let go of the Globetrotters, and every other hardship and every other struggle and every other stream of adversity I've ever gone through, if those things did not happen, I would not be standing here with you all right now. And I would like to think it's paid off, right? It's worked. So I say this to you all, because I don't know you guys personally. One thing I do, because I get to see behind the curtain of so many people's lives, we all have the same issues, all of us. It may look different on the surface, but when you get down to the bare naked bones, it's the same thing. We just want to know that we're enough. That's it. So it's constantly trying to prove, oh, well, I got this, and I do this, and You'll never have or do something that will make you enough because you are already enough. Just as you are. Like I said, God never created anything incomplete. Never. But you were on a journey to remember that you were already enough. And it wasn't going to be contingent on things, because if it was a contingent on things, then it could be taken away like that. That was when I realized I'm whole. I'm enough. So at this point in life, this is the journey, is to help people remember. Whether it's, I was at University of Notre Dame last week working with their women's team, or whether it's speaking to a corporation, whatever it is, we all strive to know that we are enough. And when you are enough, that's when everything else increases. I tell people all the time, you're never going to outperform your self-worth. I don't care who you are. You will never outperform your self-worth. So if I want to increase my performance, if I want to be a better husband, if I want to be a better father, if I want to be a better entrepreneur, I have to increase my level of self-worth, and my level of self-worth cannot be rooted in anything of the world. So I say this to you all, because I don't know where you are on your journey, because we're all at different places. We're all on the same journey. We're all in the same race, but we're all at different places. No matter what life looks like, you can trust that it's always going to work out for you. If it's not working out for you right now, you just got to let the story finish a little bit more. I'm a living testament of it. I didn't think the story was ever going to end, to the point where I wanted to end it myself. And I sat there one Sunday morning, I said, I can't do this anymore. This can't be it. This can't be life. I'm not doing this anymore. I sat here and thought about and planned how I was going to end my own life. And the only reason why I didn't was because I imagined how my son would feel knowing that his father gave up on him. And I said, goodness gracious, I wonder if this is how our Heavenly Father feels when we feel like we want to give up. God ain't going to give up on you. He can't. He won't. He hasn't. He never will. If the story's not the way you want it right now, let it finish playing out. How many times do we pick up a book or we watch a movie and we don't like the first couple, we don't turn the movie off, right? I've watched a lot of movies that the first 3 minutes were terrible, but I didn't turn them off. And then we get to the end and we're like, wow, man, I see why that. This is the same way with your life. So just because you have a bad chapter, just because you have a bad page, you might just have a bad sentence. We don't throw the whole book away, not the book of your life. So I say that, let the book finish out. Let the book finish out. But I will tell you this, you have the ability to choose how you experience the book. You have the ability to choose how you perceive a situation, and how you perceive a situation is going to determine how you experience it. I truly believe that God has gifted us with this thing called the mind. If you look at Romans 12:2, it says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. They could have said anything. You can be transformed by your finances. You can be transformed by your marriage. You can be transformed, but they said your mind. I tell people all the time, when you understand that the mind is a spiritual thing, the fact that we have the ability to have thoughts, that we have the ability to choose how we experience a situation, that's all this thing was. This thing called life was one long experience. We have a start of it, and we have the end of it, and we measure it by how we feel. You have that power as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, whatever you are, as a husband, a father. Choose to experience life in the most positive way. I don't believe God put us here to suffer. I don't believe God was put us here to sit here and say, oh, this is miserable. If that was the case, every other creature here would be doing that. We have the ability to enjoy each and every day. And I'll leave you with this. A lot of times we get so caught up in what's going to happen, or we're stuck in what has happened. I'm here to tell you that up there is not real, and this up here is not real. This thing right here where your feet are, that's what's real. That's what we call life. Life is not lived up there, and life is not lived back there. That's why I see there's an epidemic going on, especially with young people, of anxiety and fear and stress and worry. That's all future. Or they live in regret, they live in shame, they live in guilt. Well, that's in the past. When you are right here, when you are fully present, when you are where your feet are, this is when you will experience the fullness of life. So I wish you all nothing but the best on your journey. I thank you for having me today. And may you continue to see all that God has provided in your life, all that you already have. Everyone here is an acorn with that oak tree already in it. And we're on a journey to remember that. And this is why I believe diving into the Word, following the teachings of Jesus. I just told somebody this morning, I realize it's less about me learning everything I could about Jesus and me living out his message. We always get caught up in the messenger, but then we forget to live out the message. That was the whole point of it. So I love the fact that you guys are diving deeper and strengthening your connection to God and Jesus. And I just want to tell you guys from the bottom of my heart, this is what the world needs. So thank you all for having me, and thank you for your hearts and your ears. Thank you.
Yeah, get one, man. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Derick. That's awesome. In fact, when you're talking about don't go anywhere yet. So when you talk about the mindset, though, the thing that came to my mind, there's so many kind of cool sort of nuggets to take hold of there. But I thought about when it said of Jesus, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, right? He set his mind out on something beyond that moment that sustained him in the middle of the moment. So that was pretty great. I love that idea that in every acorn there's an oak tree, and everybody here is an acorn. Is that what it was?
Yeah, some of us are oak trees, but for the most part, we're acorns.
Yeah, in the process. But you just thought you were a nut, so that's better. It's an upgrade. So now we do have a little bit of time. You may have a question for Derick. Yeah, right there.
I'm dying to know the conclusion of the FBI.
Yeah, you got time? So the agent who I was dealing with, he decided I want to go into the Secret Service, and it seemed like things were going, to make the story long and short, nothing happened. They did about a 4 or 5 page write-up in the Indy Star on the whole situation, and then it just went stale. So I had to come to a reconciliation within myself of realizing that it's less about what has happened to me and more about how am I going to use this to help other people. So I say that because I had an opportunity for a large amount of money to sign a non-disclosure, and I said I won't do it because I know my testimony is going to help somebody else. So there it is.
Yeah, Jeff.
Your opinion, greatest Globetrotter of all time.
Can we turn the cameras off, or are we? Yeah. Oh, man. There you go, Derick Grant, thank you. So I would say, seriously though, Derick Grant, if I had to say, I didn't get a chance to meet Meadowlark, okay? I didn't get a chance to meet Meadowlark, but I did get to interact with Curly quite a bit. I had the opportunity and the privilege to walk through an airport with Curly. It was like you would have thought I was walking with Jesus. And at that moment, because I didn't grow up with Curly, he was a little older than I was, but at that moment I realized this guy is a legend. I already kind of knew it from my own perspective, but I got to actually see. So I would put Curly Neal up there.
Awesome. Yeah.
In life, do you think we ever stop connecting the dots?
That's a great question. I don't believe we do. I think it's constantly we're just connecting the dots. I think Steve Jobs said it best. It's like you never know where you're going until you look back to see where you were. And what I'm finding in my life, just situation after situation after situation, it was because I met this person, it was because this person, and you start to see that it's almost like I imagine God sitting here moving pieces and having us move where we need to move. So connecting the dots to me is what the miracle and the blessings of life is, when we can look at something and say, wow, it wasn't an accident, it wasn't coincidental that this happened.
Yeah.
Well, I want to see, could we see your tricks one more time?
Okay. He asked, could you see my tricks one more time? Something told me that's what you were here for. That's what you were here for. I got you at the end. Yep.
I think it's tough to ask who's the GOAT, best NBA player of all time. So I'll say top 5.
Oh, top 5. You know what? Okay, I'm gonna put Michael Jordan up there. Okay, and this is in no order, but Michael Jordan is number 1. I'm gonna throw Kobe in there. I'll throw LeBron, and now this is where it gets tricky, okay? I would take Shaq over Wilt, only because I know I watched Shaq, I didn't see Wilt, and I would imagine if Shaq played at any time, he would probably do the same things. Not to say that Wilt wouldn't, but, and then I would throw Magic in there. Magic revolutionized the game. Bird? Oh, goodness. You guys are going to do this to me, aren't you? You guys, I only had 5, guys. I only had 5. I would, honestly, I would probably take Shaq out, put him at 6, and put Bird at 5. Yeah. So, is that good? We good? I'll make it out of here now. I can leave? Thank you. I just want to make sure. Yeah.
All right, maybe one more.
Yep.
So I stepped out to use the restroom, so maybe I missed it. But what I guess pushed you to begin speaking and traveling around doing this? Like what happened? Because I know you were at home with your children,
Yeah.
wife at work, but then what happened?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I was in Florida, I didn't know what to do. So there was a guy who lived in my neighborhood. He was a former college coach, Navy football, and he said, hey, he worked for FCA. He's like, how would you like to get involved with FCA? So I said, okay, fine. So I just started going around to high schools in the Naples area and speaking. Well, then when I moved back, I had this itch, like I want to inspire people. And I never forget one day, I was sitting at my desk in my house, and I looked at the word inspire. And the word inspire comes from the Latin word spirare, which is the same root word for spirit. And it means to breathe life into. And I said, okay, so I need to use the Spirit to inspire, to breathe life into people. This is what I'm here for. So that's how it all just kind of happened in bits and pieces. You talk about connecting the dots. And before I knew it, and I feel like I could probably stay here for another 4 or 5 hours. I was actually going to set a timer to make sure I didn't stay up here longer than what I was supposed to. But I always tell people, when you find what you love, you'll know that you found it, and you know that it comes from something outside of you, because you could do it all day long. That's why I truly, firmly believe we were always supposed to go after our passions, because that's what God gave each one of us individually, was our own unique passion, and to live that out. So that's how I ended up here and why I do what I do now.
All right. You'll be around in a few minutes. People want to say hey to you?
Yes,
All right,
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
Another big hand for Derick Grant.
Thank you. I know he wants to see tricks one more time. All right, you ready? All right, okay. Everybody get your phones out if you need. I'll go ahead and wait. All right, we got any music, you think? Yeah, with the music?
Oh, music.
Yeah, do you think? Yeah. You gotta have Sweet Georgia Brown, right? Yeah. All right, ready? There you go.